We'll move now to Rod Rougelot.
Thank you, Chairperson Gordon and the committee for holding this informational hearing. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And when I was asked to present today, I was asked to introduce Replanet to the committee and to the public, and also address some of the challenges that we face in the industry today, as well as provide our thoughts within the confines of how we operate our business as to what we see in the future of the industry. In making an introduction to Replanet, and as the chairperson introduced me personally, we are known in California as the largest convenience zone operator in the state. I'll put some scale to that, and then what I want to do is tell you what we want to be known as. Today we operate nearly 700 convenience zone locations in the state. That 700 represents roughly 50% of all the convenience zone locations. We employ approximately 1,200 employees. We operate our own trucking, our own processing, and some subcontracted processing throughout the state. We literally recycle billions of containers that are recycled by millions of Californians, and we push hundreds of millions of dollars from the deposit program out into the public every year. This is a program that has been very interesting to operate within, because had we had this conversation a year ago, I would have focused on challenges that are very different than the challenges that we face today, and I'll speak to that in a little bit. What Replanet is to me, and the goal that we have set out to achieve and are in fact achieving it, is actually building the largest sustainable packaging company in the country. We take the aluminum cans, we take the aluminum or the PET bottles that are collected at our nearly 700 locations and turn them back into food packaging, which goes back into the grocery stores in which we serve today, restaurants in which many of you eat at, and food service providers all around the country. We collect here because of the success of the program and the density of the volume that we can obtain, and we manufacture and distribute nationally. Today we are building a facility in the Central Valley. It is operating today. We currently have created over 100 jobs in the Valley. We anticipate by the end of next year 400 to 600 jobs will be created in that facility. We are producing PET packaging for clamshells that you would buy at the grocery store holding your berries, takeout packaging at restaurants where you see the clear plastic top and the black plastic bottom. Many of the food service containers that you see on hotlines in a grocery store, for an example, would be something that we produce at this facility. In addition to that, what we do with the aluminum cans is we've operated since 1948 the largest aluminum stamping company in the country. We produce with the aluminum cans that we're collecting around the state pie pans, lasagna trays, turkey roasters, things that I guarantee you everyone in this room has consumed food or taken food home in one of our containers. Today, in companies that we've built and subsequently sold, 99% of all food packaged in PET on the frozen food aisle in your grocery store is produced from our DNA and one of our predecessor companies. We saw California years ago as an opportunity for us, given the program on collecting the containers, the vision that was here in the state around infrastructure and development, as an opportunity for us to establish a vertically integrated company direct from the consumer all the way through distribution, utilizing aluminum cans and plastic bottles and putting them back into the system. We're achieving this today. We would like to achieve more. As you've heard in the room on various levels of some of the waste that is in need of recycling, we too, even as the largest operator in the state, I could double my volume and consume 100% of that volume and sell it to the brands, the grocers, the restaurants, and the food distributors who are utilizing our containers today. What's interesting about how we've come about integrating this company is that it's primarily driven by the brands. We are being asked by the food brands, the retail brands, the restaurant brands, help us achieve better sustainability goals, help us communicate with our customers, and be good stewards of the environment. They drew us into this. These facts are very important when you consider some of the future scope that both Mark just brought up and Scott brought up previously. Manufacturing and processing capabilities and an investment in those areas will draw the industry and create a more sustainable industry in which we operate. What are the challenges that we face? I mentioned that had I been here a year ago, my entire focus would have been on the structural deficit of the fund. The structural deficit for a large-scale operator creates significant problems in that this is a very thin margin business. And in this business, we have to make investments that have very long lead times in the ordering and development and implementation cycle. And from there, we have to obtain financing. And with the structural deficit that was present, it is extraordinarily difficult to obtain financing. The moves that were made by the department have made a dramatic turn. We still need to do better, but they've made a dramatic turn. And it turns out that 2014 for us was the best year in the 3 years that I've been running the company. And then we came into 2015, and this time machine has rolled me forward to present to you today. The number one issue that we face today is the breakdown in commodity prices. We've seen aluminum and PET prices fall nearly 50%. Our industry is struggling. The problem with our business is that when I pay a nickel or a dime for the containers that the California consumers bring into us, there's no margin that's made on that container. So when a price of a commodity falls, as they have, all of that money comes right off our bottom line. We work very hard to reduce our expenses. We have been in the process of closing centers. It is the number one challenge that we face today. The uncertainty around world oil prices, the Chinese economy, and the things that they're doing with their production and export of commodities has dramatically influenced us. And it's put not only us, but the reclaimers and the manufacturers in a very, very difficult position. So the structural deficit to me is the second layer. It's close. It still needs improvement. I believe that given shifts in the market, we will see those improvements. And I commend the department for the job that they're doing. And we are willing participants in the process to continue to reform and modernize the program. Municipal resistance is the third greatest thing that we see. There are communities around the state that are completely disregarding the beverage container recycling laws that exist and have closed down recycling centers in those communities. Without getting into the details, for further conversation, there are many, many cities around the state that are making it very difficult for California consumers who choose to receive their nickels and dimes back to actually have a convenient opportunity to do so. This is a big challenge that we face because we're a volume-based business and we're a service-based business. And we like to provide the same service everywhere throughout the state. And lastly, rising costs. That is a future concern of mine, but it's coming very quickly. We handled the health insurance costs 2 years ago. We implemented a full program for our employees as a better way to hire and retain, and we utilized that as an alternative to other cost reductions. The minimum wage legislation has not been absorbed, and as we see this coming, it is not sustainable for our industry to simply operate within the confines of the commodity prices and offset the incremental costs of labor if commodity prices continue to stay at this level. Those are the challenges that we face. The future of the industry, as you've heard today, is integrating not only the great job that we're doing on collection, but integrating the mid-step processing to convert and the end-stage manufacturing to push products back into the market. We believe that this is a critical approach. We believe that the manufacturers and their customers will draw, and ultimately the value will move down the chain and create a more sustainable operating environment for the collection side of the operation. I view the future in two steps. I view the near-term or short-term step as a continued focus on shoring up the structural deficit and eliminating it. That comes through reducing fraud, which has been the #1 impact on improving the fund. I think increasing collections through two main approaches: continued focus on bringing distributors into the program who have yet to be participating, and the possibility of program expansion, which has been considered over the years. And lastly, reform. The program needs to be modernized. It needs to address current technology. It needs to address different consumer patterns. It needs to address the opportunities that exist on the processing and manufacturing side of the equation. And we need to think about ways to protect against the downside. So thank you for your time, and I'm available for questions later.
Thank you, and we'll take questions after our final presentation from John Wick.
If you allow me, I need to set up my easel, so this will just take 1 minute. Apologize to you guys. Facing that. This is unusual. Hello. Can you hear me all right there?
Perfect. Thank you.
So will you be able to see this? My name is John Wick, and I'm a member of the California Native Plant Society. My wife and I manage a ranch in Nicasio, California. And my wife is also Peggy Rathman, and as a member of the Rathman Family Foundation, when we combine all three of these, we come up with some wonderful opportunities, and that's what we've done on our ranch. We've introduced research into ranching and have discovered something very important, and that's what I'd like to share with you today. For over a decade, we've been working with a PhD rangeland ecologist, learning to manage our landscape, and in that process, we observed what we thought was increasing soil carbon levels from our management practices. This seemed really important, especially in 2007 when we were starting to get serious about this, because AB 32 had just been signed into law. The idea, though, is that a Climate Solutions Act would welcome a climate solution. And that's what we thought we were discussing here. So to begin to illustrate what we thought we were doing, as a rancher and a farmer, my main job is to grow grass. I'm sorry to the audience here. I'll do this for you guys later if you want me to. So the production of grass is a pretty primary concern to me. I grow grass and we graze it with cattle at this time, sometimes sheep. And the idea here is the grass plants. Dr. Creek was suggesting that if you think of grass plants as little straws that sip carbon from the atmosphere, that would be a great way to approach this scientific pursuit. And so our production of grass started to look like it was increasing soil carbon because we were seeing a shift in the species composition and we were seeing an extended growing season. And in 2007, we were able to reach out to a biogeochemist, Dr. Wendy Silver at UC Berkeley, and ask her the question, is my grazing management increasing durable soil carbon, and would it qualify for carbon credits? And so starting in 2008, we began a research project looking at whether we could in fact increase soil carbon. And doing this with the biogeochemist allowed us to use soil carbon fractionation and understand how carbon functions in healthy soil systems. So our production of grass turns out to transfer atmospheric carbon through photosynthesis. And the basic illustration, well, this is hard to draw and talk in this mic, I apologize. What we learned in school and are all familiar with is that green-leafed plants release oxygen and moisture to the atmosphere. And in doing so, that's a good thing. But at that moment, when the stomata open, the microscopic holes, atmospheric CO2, which is a gas under pressure fills those holes in the plants. Then under the sun's energy, the plant performs photosynthesis and pulls in soil moisture and combines it with atmospheric carbon to create carbohydrates. I didn't realize till this project, but all of the carbon and carbohydrates comes from the air and nowhere else. Had you asked me before this, I would have suggested from the soil. And it's the opposite, and that's what our research has shown. The primary practice that we experimented with was putting compost on top of grazed rangeland systems to see if, in fact, we could increase durable soil carbon, and it worked. And so after 1 year, we were able to show increases of soil carbon, increased water holding capacity, increased forage production, and it looked very promising. And then a very important thing happened to us. After that initial half-inch application of compost, without any further compost, the next year, and the next year, and the next year, for 5 years, every year, more carbon came into the soil photosynthetically on its own. And when we gave this data set to Colorado State University, Dr. Bill Parton, who was the author of the Century Model, he suggests that phenomenon will continue for 30, if not 100 years. Very exciting. So what we've shown is the production of grass on grazed rangelands, there's a mechanism available for agriculture to become a restorative practice, to produce an abundance of biomass that's more nutritious, while also increasing water holding capacity, which is very important during a period of drought, as well as increasing soil carbon that came from the atmosphere. Now, it became quickly clear to us that compost was the actionable item here, and how do we get more compost? And so we've expanded our research to look at other feedstocks, and we've identified that the dairy manure sector in California is one of the largest sources of emissions for greenhouse gases in the state, and the opportunity to capture all of that dairy manure and get it into compost is a very exciting prospect. But also we're looking at the urban stream, and I've provided you with maps. And the idea here is that as a climate solution, the opportunity is to combine several problem sets, including waste management, agricultural production that is a source of greenhouse gases, and come up with a solution set that are based on working with the NRCS, using the existing infrastructure of our federally funded practice standards through conservation innovation grants and EQIP grants, to develop a type of agriculture that is restorative to carbon in the soil system. So basically, this didn't work as a drawing demonstration. I apologize for that, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, I do. I'm sorry. I did have one prop here I want to show you. we've been working with different manufacturers. This is a North Face hoodie that was produced in December. They made 5,000 of these, and these are climate beneficial hoodies. The idea here is this is a compostable garment. It's locally grown, locally sewn cotton. The pigments are all plant-based, and by removing the zipper, this can be composted. We've also provided a pair of blue jeans. The pigment here is from indigo. This is locally grown organic cotton from Cape Valley. And here again, this is a 100% compostable product. So the idea is the production of food, fuel, fiber, and flora could all be done in a way that's restorative to soil carbon through informed agricultural practices, and that every aspect of this is either compostable, which closes all the cycles and removes tremendous amounts of carbon from the air, enhances soil water holding capacity, goes from there. Thank you.
Great.